Well, welcome to the Climate Change Task Force. We have with us four of the members, Michelle Carell, Michael Oman, Kale Romanoff, and myself, Sandy Wilmot. I don't see any public attending. I did get an email from Peter Bennett, who had some concerns about including wood heat in our recommendations, and I think you might have captured that in some of your comments, Michael. So we can get to that when we reach that point. Um, a few announcements. In addition to what we were talking about, the the class that Leslie Ann de Pigny-Giroux had done with Underhill, their report has been sort of picked up by the Climate Council, and they asked if we could speak to them on April, I think it's April 6th, a Monday, one of their Monday meetings. Um, so I was planning to go and just tell them what we did and some of the results that the class came up with there. Um, in addition, I had an email from Jennifer Silpe Katz at the Underhill Town Hall. Someone had contacted her from the Vermont Bond Bank.
On bank.
Yeah,
It's a thing.
and they have a forum coming up and wondered if we might attend and talk to them. I did look at the forum announcement, and they'll have four speakers on their panel who are, from the Vermont Climate Council. So I'm not sure we'll add a lot, but I thought I'd ask the group whether you think that's important or not. Let me
The
I'd
pull
have to
up.
Vermont
know a little bit more
Bond
about what
Bank?
they're doing.
Yeah, what's the Vermont Bond Bank? Is that the name?
Yeah, that would be my question. What would be our role there, and what would the contribution be about? I
Well,
mean,
the bond
Yeah,
bank manages like municipal lending. Like if the town was going to take out a bond
Okay.
to do
right,
some big project, they would go through the Vermont Bond Bank.
And are
but
they
I'm
That's
not
all I
sure
doing,
know.
how this would feed into that. It's not
I
obvious
don't
to
know.
me.
um,
It's probably there's must be some sort of climate change focused program that you're discussing that they're holding. I'm imagining if they're having a climate change task force and then asking us to contribute or participate.
yeah. So it's called the Vermont Capital Planning Forum. Um, he says, our work is a great example of work we hope many communities are doing. We also think the capital plan is a good place for the related investments, both financial and physical, to live. So as part of their April 13th meeting, they have a session on capital planning for physical impacts of climate change. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, we
Good
haven't
topic.
really. I'm sorry, Kale.
It's a good topic, but we haven't really touched on it, which is it sounds
Yeah,
like you're.
that's kind of what I was sort of saying. I mean, we haven't really kind of broken our stuff out in that way. So I don't know how much. I mean, it does provide a basis for doing more. And one of the things that I hope to talk about at some point was whether or not we want to follow up with any kind of an implementation um, kind of deal with this. We haven't really included that. You know, if I were doing a plan, the final chapter would be an implementation chapter, which would, identify a lot of the specific things that came out of this. I mean, we had that huge, specific actions proposal that was put together, many of which, got consolidated into general goals and ideas and policies. But there are many, many, many actions that could be identified and parceled out to various activities, including potential capital investment. But we have not done anything with that yet. So I just kind of very late. It was made a very long repetition of what Kale said.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's premature for us to have much of anything to say to the group other than we did this project with UVM. Um, I
We
think
did
a
this
lot of,
stuff that will set up the capital planning in the future,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's not the cap. I feel like that's the next phase that we weren't really going to touch up. I mean, we might touch on briefly in an implementation, as you said, but we won't dig into the actually how to do it.
yeah,
I feel like that's for people using this plan, figuring out using this plan to figure out what they should do, and then they figure out how to make it happen with capital projects after that.
yeah. Well, I'll write him back and say thanks for the offer, but we don't feel like we're ready for that kind of a thing. And I think that's what the Climate Council is really all about. So, yeah, good. Anything else before we dive into the plan itself? Michael, did you have a did the Energy Committee have a chance to look at the plan and were there comments there?
We did put it out. We had a meeting, but the meeting was totally swamped with a couple of other activities, ARPA projects and discussion of the Affordable Heating Act, which got somewhat heated, if shall we say. And so we didn't really spend a lot of time on it. I know that it has been, we did put it out to everybody on the committee with the link to get to the document and be able to leave comments if they wanted to. And I see that heretofore no one has. So, but we have not actually had, we didn't get to the agenda item that would have said, what do you think, kind of thing. We ran
Okay.
out of time, big time last time.
Okay. Well, let's dive in. I will once again attempt to share my screen. I can see that it's one part of this. I'm trying to figure out how to make it bigger. Hmm. Gail, do you have any suggestions about how to
Is
make
that
it's there, but I'm not seeing how to make it full screen.
Right now you're sharing the email.
Right. I think
Yeah.
maybe once you get to the actual Google Doc, it may be easier to do that.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
And you can
yeah, I
go
think
to
on
the,
there's a
sorry,
Zoom somewhere.
you see where it says 100% on the bar, kind of towards the left, that light blue bar, start at the
Oh,
left. There you go down 100%.
right
You can
there.
like
Yeah.
make it 125 or something. There you go.
Is that going to work? How about that?
That's great.
Although at the moment it's not also encompassing the comments, which will be off to the right and in that marginal column. You can slide it over to the right a little bit, and then it'll sort of be, yeah, that looks good. There you go. I think
Yep.
you've got it
That
now.
looks
All right. We had, my thought was that we would go back to where we'd ended, finish the document, and then go back to the beginning and see if there's additions there, if that's okay with everyone. Whee! course, now I'm forgetting where we left off, but I think we finished land use. Let's start here, and I think there's some additional comments anyways from maybe from you, Michael.
Yeah, I've added stuff as I went back and sort of put a whole bunch of stuff in.
Well, I mean, do you want to say anything here, or you're just asking the question?
Well, let me figure out what did I say? What did I write? I
You
can't
asked,
really.
have we adequately ID'd our vulnerabilities, for example, Irene and Mansfield storm info?
Yeah, I guess I'm asking that question to the group. And I think that is an older question, but I'm trying to see it on my screen here so I can see exactly where everything fits. That's in.
I thought we did that earlier in the report, didn't we?
We had a section in the beginning where it was talking about Vermont specific climate information, and we added some information about um, the fact that we have extreme precipitation events.
Yeah, and I think I added something to the language here that talks about that.
You mean down below?
Yeah, I may have done something with that. Let's see.
Yeah, your next comment, Sandy, says the language was added.
Yeah, that's been around for a while, and I think we may have added something to that
Yeah, it's
to address
February.
that.
Okay, I'm going to start resolving things. How about that?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah, that
idea.
sounds good. Yeah, I think we addressed that one, Sandy. I don't know exactly where, but my
It did
recollection
say
is
language added, so it's a good
yeah,
recollection.
yeah. Okay, good.
Minimize impacts from weather. Oh, these are all things we've added, so we can accept those. Um, so my question is, are we doing a good job of capturing what we need to do to really prepare and adapt? Um, I think you've added this action about infrastructure, or somebody did, um, which is important. One of the things that I haven't done yet is to contact the town infrastructure committee to see what kind of specifics they think as far as infrastructure goes. But I think we can accept that one. Identify those streams and roads and infrastructure. Um, Promote or incentivize home energy systems, including renewable energy generation and storage, battery backup. I feel like we have done this already. So
Yep, I think that's
create
fine.
a
I have
neighborhood
a general
assistance.
question about these action recommendations. Like, is it our job? Probably not, to say like who would be responsible for those actions, or this is sort of the town looks at this and they would like, others would decide who would be responsible, for example, for identifying vulnerable streams or incentivizing home energy systems and so forth.
Michelle, that's the implementation section that I was talking about earlier, and I think Kale also mentioned that we have not undertaken to provide as part of this.
Okay.
I think maybe at the end we could or should say something that this needs to be done as to carry this forward. But your comment is very well taken, and that's what I had been thinking about before on that.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know if we need to go to this level, but as Sandy remembers, for the town plan, we literally made a chart and took every, for example, action item. I can't remember what we called them, strategies maybe in the town plan, and then
Right.
assigned like a public body that would be responsible for managing that action item over the course of the plan. I don't think
Yeah,
we
that
have the
that would.
time or the resources for this. Maybe we do, but
I
that
don't
would be
think we
the,
do, but that's
yeah,
what I was talking about. That kind of
yeah,
thing where we identify everything that's come out of it, all the actions that we can possibly take under this, and we have looked at a whole bunch of them over this activity, and we identify a period in which they'll be implemented and who would be responsible for implementing them, and possibly mechanisms to do that.
yep,
And any and all of those things would be a very helpful adjunct, but I think most CAPs are not doing that.
yeah. I think a high level one might be nice to point certain bodies in the right direction. Final
Yep.
chapter or paragraph, however it needs to be. But
Yeah. Okay. Enhance community building activities, such as programs currently promoted by the Rec Committee, the Food Shelf, and the Underhill Sunday Soup Group. Is that
Isn't that actually the rec committee that does the Sunday soup supper? I mean, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that,
no, I don't think so. I think it's
I
a
don't think
separate.
so.
but
I think that was right. You might call it the Underhill Sunday Soup Supper Group.
yeah, well, I was just there the last one, and they seem to be representing it as a rec committee activity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I mean, I, I don't feel any necessity to. I
Yeah.
mean, recognizing it is a perfectly reasonable thing to do.
Anything else on that one?
Keep.
I like these recommendations.
The next, I guess we improve. Yeah, we decided we didn't need a better snow plowing capacity.
I didn't
Um,
feel that we had any deficiencies there, but nobody seemed to say we did.
I
yeah,
didn't either. Huh?
especially when you cross the line into Cambridge and it's not plowed.
And
I think
then you
Underhill does a
know.
pretty good job.
um, the update town road, driveway, trail ordinances, reduce erosion, promote development in the villages. Um, and then we added this example. Does that example seem a little out of place, or
I don't have
maybe
a
it,
problem with it myself. I don't know what is our current requirement. 10%,
yeah,
15%.
Yeah, there's a
10.
waiver for a small distance of exceeding that, but it's for a small period. But yeah, for the most part, it's 10%, I think.
I mean, because 10% is probably okay.
But if we do this, where the example is actually right next to driveways instead.
Yep, that sounds fine. I've got no problem with that.
Um, Another
Sounds
thing
good.
that I've always thought on a climate change perspective that would be helpful to be in the road ordinance that I've always thought there'd be pushback for, but should be discussed at some level is having like a length limit on
Yeah.
driveways to prevent forest fragmentation, to prevent excess stormwater. There's so many reasons. I'm not sure how to fit it into this. Maybe it can be implied there. Maybe it fits right into this one. I don't know.
It's not road though, that's more driveway again, right? Or
Driveway
road.
length, yeah, but they would
But
fall
it
under the
covered,
road ordinance.
yeah, it's covered by the
Driveway,
ordinance.
reduce driveway length. Yeah.
You could say, e.g., reduce allowable grade and length even, just, just like you,
Hi.
well, but you said it already there. Just add it to that
Um,
part.
the road part, yeah, and the ice. Good morning. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
We've been
Hi,
here a
Karen.
long time.
I'm so sorry. I,
That's all right.
yeah, just 3 meetings in the evening back to back is like, no, 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 I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm here. And
I,
Um,
I know the feeling, Karen, and I share it.
it has nothing to do with this committee. It's just a multiples. That's all. This is wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Kale. Uh, so we've added a little detail there, and I think that will not be received well, but too bad. Yeah, I think the length of roads is just amazing to me. Uh,
My short
For some reason,
experience as a
I'm,
zoning administrator doesn't appear to be abused, but it just seems like an easy way to prevent fragmentation.
yeah,
yeah, I think you're probably
There's no
right.
need for someone to have a house hundreds of yards out into the woods. Make
I
them
mean, that
keep the
sounds
driveway to a
more like
reasonable
a,
length.
is that more an issue about where the houses are built? I mean, if the house, you can't reduce the driveway length if the house is like way, way back. So is it more an issue about where the houses are built versus the
Well,
length of the
yeah,
driveway or?
Yeah.
you could get at it
It
both
is.
ways. You could put
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
something in the zoning that says it has to be so close, so
Yeah.
far from the road. I feel like a road ordinance would be an easier way to get it done, though. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway,
Because
Could be right.
the other thing to keep in mind is if the road's going way back to reach a house that's in the middle of the woods, that house is creating fragmentation of the forest.
Yeah, yeah, the house
Exactly.
So,
itself
Yep.
is.
Yep. That's
yeah,
that part of the point. Exactly. I
yeah.
noticed for some reason our bullet is still an edit.
mm, I don't know. I'll work on that. How about that?
Fair enough. Yeah, it's not. I just noticed it was in the edit color as opposed to
Yeah.
the edited color.
Okay, let's see. I'll scroll down here a little bit. Develop plans for seniors and vulnerable residents. Prepare for extreme heat events and other extreme weather events. Let's see, how can we make this better?
just say for
Well,
extreme weather events, that would include, we could put, for example, heat.
including heat or
Yeah.
extreme heat and other extreme weather. And the event is in there twice. We don't need event in
Yeah.
there twice.
I think we just leave it to prepare for extreme weather events, and then if
I
we
think,
want to put like an EG in parentheses, that's one thing. But I think we
yeah.
Yep,
at least take
that's
heat out
good.
of the sentence. At least if you want to add it as a parentheses, that's
You know, another connector to the roads, and maybe you've already discussed this, is the further back they're in into the forest land, opens it up to more erosion if we have
yep.
an extreme downpour. So, that's another reason to limit the
Yep.
length of the road and maintenance, because it's a private driveway and might not be maintained.
Yeah, reduce erosion, promote development, uh, reduce erosion, forest fragmentation, and promote development in the villages. How about that?
Yeah, that.
It's fine.
Can I play with the commas a little?
Oh, please,
I think
be
I
my
think
comma
we're
guy.
reducing both erosion and fragmentation, and then we're also promoting.
Excellent. I don't know why that's there. Okay. So did I get that right? Develop plans to help seniors and vulnerable. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
That's fine.
Um, is this one good? I think it is, but prepare
We
residents
weren't
for.
suggesting any edits on that one, so we can skip it. Take
Okay.
advantage of our. Now I noticed the page before the bullets are not, the lines are not separate. I don't know, just a formatting thing. Here we've got a line between the bullets, and the page before we didn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of formatting that
Okay, yeah.
I'll have to go back and do, but we hadn't accepted a lot of things here, so
Right,
the formatting was pretty.
right.
Yeah,
Not a lot of sense in doing a whole lot with that until we get the
yeah.
Yeah,
content
we could do
down.
the formatting outside of a meeting, I think.
Yes, I
Mm.
agree. I just was noticing it.
Okay, so Michael, you've added these review town regulations and update to reflect optimal levels of protection for hydrologic resources.
Is
Right.
Um,
there something that you wanted to define it a little bit, or do you want to leave it open? Like, would some people not understand that?
I'm not
I don't.
sure what you want to protect here. What are you protecting?
Groundwater?
Stream, well, basically streams, wetlands, ponds,
Okay,
runoff from areas, vegetation and so on and so forth. And I think there are a lot of things that can go into that: maintenance of appropriate cover, protection of riparian lands, prevention of development in and around stream beds, and protection of floodplain capabilities. There's a lot. I thought there were so many possibilities. I didn't want to start trying to list them. It would be almost a report in its own right, kind of thing.
okay. I I was thinking man-made things, so that's why I didn't go there. Sorry. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. No,
That's
it's
helpful to me because I wasn't sure what that meant. So
yep.
thanks.
Yeah.
That's what it was about.
Okay.
And
Um,
there could be zoning and subdivision, and a variety of both activities and regulations that affect those things.
yeah. Review town flood hazard regulations to account for increased rainfall and storm intensity and update where necessary to protect public infrastructure and promote public safety.
I'm
Okay,
good with
so
that.
this is
Yeah, I just threw that in there.
good.
Mhm.
Enhance critical. Sorry, I accepted this without looking at it, but enhance critical response capabilities of town services and facilities, including town hall and garage, with adequate emergency power supplies and communities.
Ooh, that would be a good idea, maybe. Do we already have that? Or
No,
we really, oh, we don't? We don't have an electric generator at the town hall, or no?
We've got
no,
ARPA requests in for both,
Oh, okay. I didn't
but
mean
we do not
electric.
currently have.
Ooh.
and I think you added this one too, Michael. Identify and secure critical response sources of materials like gravel, drainage, and drainage supplies for a
Like
response.
culvert material, culverts and culvert.
Yeah.
I know that was a huge problem when Irene came through down Route 100. I was doing some work down there in one of those communities, and locating the material just to sort of reconstruct their roads where they had so many washouts and everything was a major headache for them
Mhm.
and delayed a lot of the response.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that. I think you've mentioned it before and it just never got in here.
So,
Um,
mm,
Go ahead.
um, with the enhanced critical response capabilities, would that include, I know that some communities say if you're out of electricity and no power and no water, you can go to X to spend the night. Would
Right.
would that include
Emergency
this?
shelter. Mhm.
Yeah, for shelter and hot food, or
We have that
you know,
above, right?
is that
That was
okay?
the idea, yeah, the critical response capabilities.
Actually,
I,
here in this one though is
Yeah, emergency shelters.
establishing, yeah.
yeah, we do have emergency shelters and cooling centers. So I think we do have something in there relative to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's important.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, moving on to food systems. I think we just have this one: encourage producing, selling. So Jericho did pass their. They decided to create a food task force that would look into creating Jericho as a food hub, and they already have like 10 people that volunteered to be on this task force. So they're really moving ahead with that. So maybe at this point we're not necessarily partnering with Transition Town Jericho, but with the town of Jericho in their food security initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I don't think we need to necessarily drop Transition Town because I know they're the ones who are behind all of this, and they're undoubtedly going to be kind of the tip of the spear of it as they go ahead. I think maybe just add, town initiatives to it as opposed to take away the.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I think that's better a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Smart growth.
Right.
I think the idea is that this one here, encouraging density in the village, a lot of these are supposed to fall under it. So another formatting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Create a village plan for both Underhill Center and Underhill Flats that considers increased populations from climate migration. Sound good?
Yeah.
Really not. Invest in water and wastewater infrastructure in both villages. Reduce lot size requirements in village centers. Sound okay?
Yeah.
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 Pretty much essential, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Increase maximum allowable residential density in village centers. I'm not
Why
even
don't we combine those two? They're really they're the same basic kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, is it the same? Lot size and
Well,
increased.
well, lot sizes is one mechanism for increasing density, as would be multifamily dwellings and ADUs and stuff like that. So they're
Yeah.
kind of and coverage limitations and a variety of other things associated with it.
So that one, whoops, what did you do with that? Oh, the lower or remove
I
minimum
just
part.
added it to this one, was all.
Yeah, I don't know if that lower or remove minimum parking requirements would cause a lot of issues. Because right now in the villages, there's really, you park in your driveway, but to have people parking on the street, I think would especially create havoc at this point. I mean, our roads are narrow. I don't know. I mean, Kale, you
Not allowed
were
in the
there.
winter.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you do if you can't park there in the winter?
ride your bike.
Well,
Don't have a car.
one of the things I see is that we require for a single family home that you have 2 parking spots. Not everyone has 2 cars, but that requirement is still there.
Mhm.
It comes into
Just,
play more with multi-unit housing. So say you
Mhm,
put in a triplex and you have to have 6 parking spots. Granted, I don't think there's a triplex allowed in Underhill, but either way, that's the point. Is like as you get into a larger size, say you have 10 units, that's 20 parking spots. So it gets
Mhm.
exponentially a bigger problem. 1 unit with 2 spots, was it really that big of a difference to only require one? They're probably still going to put 2 spots in anyways. I think it's the developers not wanting to build 10 units because they have to find a parking lot big enough for 20 cars to make it happen.
mhm,
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work in parking in my day, and basically, few if any developers want to build any development that does not have enough parking to support it. I think the problems are more often limiting parking and that sort of thing to make sure that it doesn't get too big. But if somebody can get away with it, for example, if you're building senior housing, all of a sudden, the necessity of having a couple of parking spaces for each unit begins to become a bad idea very quickly, and things like that. So you don't necessarily have to do it, but the recommendation is to lower or reduce minimum parking requirements. And don't forget, whenever you build parking, that's 100% runoff
Yeah, it
is
is.
what we're basically looking at. Our infiltration wherever the parking exists is basically zero. You can get away with some, but that dramatically adds to all the problems that we're trying to address. So I don't think it would be a bad idea to do something like that. I mean, the planning commission and everybody should look at it and make sure that it's a good job that we've done. But I think that this is really a contributor to problems that we have.
Yeah, and in the short term, it might cause problems, as Karen was saying, with people parking on the road and stuff because there aren't enough spots. But I think in the long run, the goal is to make our villages walkable and people not needing their cars. So maybe
mhm.
your household only has 1 car because that's all you need, and that's the norm in the future.
Yeah.
It's not the norm now. It's hard to envision, but
And maybe your kids take the school buses instead of driving to high school.
yep.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Oh, yeah.
Is it okay to add this, especially to
I'm good with
reduce?
it, but
What's that?
I say I'm good with it, but others should chime in.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see my way around it, and some of the places that we've approved for, like um, the multi-unit that's a sort of kitty corner to the town hall. It used to be called the Chicken Coop. It's the blue building, and there, in order to meet that minimum parking requirement, they had to configure all sorts of things. I mean, how many? There are 3 apartments there, and they had to provide 6, but not in the floodplain. Isn't that the way it was, Kale? I believe at
That
that
was
time.
before me, but that sounds right.
Yeah. So I was the one that wrote that up, but I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. But I think that the point was to keep people from parking on Pleasant Valley Road. On the other point, though, was that they could have certainly in off hours used parking at the town hall or that little one next to it. So yeah, maybe if we start thinking about it and be creative, maybe that would be okay the way it is. Reduce or lower minimum parking. Yeah.
Don't forget, these are the requirements that are
Yeah.
basically written in. It doesn't mean you cannot provide parking. What it means is that we aren't requiring everybody to do it um, without so much as paying any attention to it.
Hmm.
So yeah, in that situation, you would have had to, or you like potentially would have had to approve something with only 3 parking spots if it was knocked down to 1 spot per unit instead of
Hmm.
6 parking spots.
It sounds like a very good recommendation.
Yeah. I mean, in the long term, maybe people will start thinking about, do you need two cars?
Right.
Especially with people that can work from home now, you don't need to.
This, along with a handful of the ones right in this part of the list, are ones that are under consideration in the housing bill that's in the legislature right now. So they might
Oh,
get
great.
forced on. They might get forced on the town,
Mm.
regardless of this plan. um, as
Well,
a
that would
side
only
point.
be in Seward areas, I think, Gail.
Yeah, that's what they're working out right now.
Yeah,
Only in what areas?
Seward areas, areas with
Places that
sewer
have
service.
Oh,
Not the
I
wastewater.
see.
parking part. Not the
Oh,
parking
okay. I was
part,
going
but
to say, why
the
would you
lot
want to
size
park in a
stuff in the
sewer area? But I get
duplexes and
what you're
all that
saying.
stuff would be.
Yeah. Okay.
Protect forests, wetlands, wildlife habitat outside the village center to maintain health and natural ability to adapt to climate change. It's kind of vague about how we're going to protect them, but
Yeah. I wonder if we can say something about stricter regulations about invading forests. I mean, the wetlands, I think, are protected, but the forest wildlife corridors and wildlife habitats are still, it's becoming more popular, but at this point, for some people that want to subdivide, they don't even want to think about that. So I'm wondering
Well,
how we can
I put a,
limit what? Yeah.
oh, sorry to interrupt you. I had put a comment in an earlier section that had to do with, trying to incentivize maintaining forest, and maybe we can look at that in a moment. But my question was, can we, and I don't know which section this would go in, but can we propose the idea of having some type of property or, town tax incentive for people who preserve forest, even as they're planning to subdivide, and so that was a comment I put a little bit earlier. I also have a question about the second to last bullet here. What is simplified land use regulations to make more housing types allowed by right in village centers? Do we just mean allowed in village centers, or do we mean allowed nearby to, or what does that language mean?
The by right is a technical zoning term, as opposed to as a conditional use.
Oh, I'm
It's a
sorry. I
use.
didn't
It's a
know
use by
that.
right. Yes.
Okay, got it. I was thinking of it being simply a term of proximity.
No,
yeah.
it's a technical zoning term relative to the type of approval that's required.
Okay, thank you.
Should we put not conditional use here?
Allowed
I,
by right says what it
No.
means. It just not everybody knows what it is, of course. But
that's okay.
Yeah, I think we should I think we should put conditional use. I don't think we should ignore that because I can think of a lot of situations where they're not going to get their subdivision and building unless they meet the town regulations, and that's a conditional use. You are approved once you meet these conditions. That's how I think we use conditional use quite a bit. I mean, maybe Kale, you have a different opinion, but from where I sit on that board, it's kind of
Sorry, I
the,
missed the beginning of what you were saying there, Karen, because I was typing
oh,
something. So
I was saying
I
that,
don't know if I have a different point.
well, I think there was some conversation about eliminating conditional use, or saying we would eliminate that, where I think that that's something that is really necessary, because without any more muscle or fines that the town can um, levy against people that don't meet the village or the zoning regulations and requirements, that conditional use basically says we need to have that, and you need to fulfill these 5 conditions, whatever they are, in order for you to build and get a occupancy permit. I mean, that's basically what it's about. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
sort of,
conditional
conditional
use.
use slows the process down and adds money, and that turns a lot of people off. So I think if we're trying to promote density in a place, I think it makes sense to remove conditional use from as much of it as we can. Like there's stuff that we really want to protect. Like I don't propose taking conditional use review out of forested areas up off of our settlement, but I think it makes sense dealing with apartments in the villages. I think that would be great if that was just a ZA, quick and easy, let people do it, in my opinion.
So everybody's good with this sentence the way it reads now?
Uh,
Provide flexibility in land use regulations to make more housing types allowed by right, i.e. not conditional use in village centers.
mm, I mean,
That's fine with me.
yeah, I have some issues with it, but if the majority wants that section in, that's fine. I mean, I personally seeing how we use it to regulate. And I know you want to eliminate some of the regulations, but it's just some of them are, from my perspective, necessary.
In the village centers though, Karen?
Well,
I also
um,
don't, oh, go ahead, Karen.
yeah, never mind. Go
And I
ahead.
believe that they would still be subject to site plan review. Is that not correct, Kale or Sandy?
Yeah, they would.
So in other words, we're not giving up regulation. What we're saying though is that there isn't this basically second level of approval that says, can we do it at all? That's what
I
conditional use does. It's a second bite at the apple of not being able to do it at all.
Oh, I think of it as you can do it, but you must do these things or it's not going to meet our regulations.
Yeah, we can write that even into the by right provisions. In other words, to satisfy the zoning requirements, the various provisions have to be met, and that's into the by right. And there's a variety. There's all sorts of. There's dimensional. There's open space. There's drainage requirements. There's site plan review associated with it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those have to be satisfied, but conditional review is basically yet another opportunity to say no, not at all.
also have a general question about the the definition of village centers and how much space does that term cover? And so are we talking, is it fairly small, like, or is it like the square mile or so around? So anyway, that's a question because I think depending upon how far out it goes, we might want more versus less review.
Yeah, right now we've been talking about village centers as only those really small areas around the main roads. Um, the the state has a designation of village centers, which is different than our zoning district. So you're right to ask that question. Um, I think by leaving it village centers, we're allowing flexibility for how that gets interpreted.
Either one is particularly big. I think the village designations by the state are slightly bigger than our zoning districts, but I could be wrong on that.
They're very
But
small for Underhill flats in particular. It's very small. It's just basically Route 15 to the bridge of Poker Hill of Meadow Lane and Park Street, and that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly a selfish question because we live up up on Sandhill Road before you get to Underhill Center, where there's 5 acre zoning right now. So I don't know if like that neighborhood, it's like a little bit broader than where the town is.
if you're in 5 acre zoning, you're not in the village
Right,
district, but
right.
Right.
I
Okay.
guess it's conceivable you're in what the state has designated as the village.
Yeah, so just I'm sure that people, my neighbors and so would be concerned if someone started building an apartment building in the next
Yeah.
door lot. So
Yeah, but
that's
I
yeah.
think that given that this is a zoning application that we're talking about here, that it would apply to zoning districts, a village zoning district, which would
That
be
was kind of
subject to
what I
forceful.
imagined.
What's that, Gail? I'm sorry.
That's what I imagined,
Yeah,
to be honest,
that
is the
that
zoning
makes sense to
districts.
me. That we're basically talking about a zoning recommendation. So it's
Yep.
going to apply to zoning definitions of the villages, which are pretty constrained in Underhill, I believe.
We could be more clear and say in the village zoning districts, make it more explicit.
Do we call them the historical village?
No, I think it's the Underhill Flats Village District and the
District?
Underhill Center Village.
Okay, I thought that. Didn't we all vote on permitting yeah, I don't, the historical, I know in Underhill Center, isn't it the historical village center? It goes up to past the school, I believe, and after
Goes up
town.
the school property is the end of it. I'm looking at a
Yeah,
map right now.
yeah.
The school property is the last property up there. So Tomasi and stuff is all out of the village.
Thanks for that conversation. It's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's most for the Underhill Center. It's mostly River Road, and then it goes up Beartown and Range a little bit, and all the little subdivisions and the flats are part of the village. But other than that, it's basically Route 15.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the forest and wetland and wildlife. Do we like this the way it is?
Good for me. Karen, what do you think?
I'd like it a little bit more explicit as to what protect means.
Yeah.
But last night I had a lot of good ideas when we were talking about some other things, but tonight I'm trying to not such good ideas with word use. Let me see.
While she's looking that up, one thought I have is it seems to dovetail really well with the first bullet. So maybe it makes sense to have this right after the fourth bullet. The first
Mhm.
bullet saying we're
Yeah.
encouraging density in the village, and the second is we're protecting the wildlife outside the village, or protecting however we're going to say it.
Oops.
So that kind of sets the tone for this whole thing as we're
Yeah.
promoting it in the village, protecting it outside.
Do we want to say something about maybe limiting incursion into forest, wetlands, and wildlife habitat outside the village in order to protect.
What was the first word you used? Prevent?
I was thinking limit incursion into.
I like that, Karen.
Yeah.
Mm,
Limit
not sure.
incursion
Into forest, wetlands, wildlife habitat.
outside the village center.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think. How about that? Is that too strong or?
No, but the question is, does it cover all the protections that we might be looking for in terms of lumbering practices or anything like that that might be involved?
Well, then you'd get into things like it would be a lot more in
Specific.
depth,
Yeah.
specific. And I don't know that. I think the principles are broad principles more than specific. I mean, I'd like to see the specifics, but I think I don't know how people feel. It's just.
Well,
Yeah,
this
I
is
was just
under
worried
the,
that I liked protect because it covered a host of ills. It's sort of like you could use it for anything, including limit incursion and a variety of other practices that might be involved.
Ah.
I like
Well,
limiting incursion, but
well,
I'm
then
worried.
why don't we say protect and limit?
I would be good with
yeah.
that.
And this is under the section for addressing climate migration and smart growth. So,
Yeah.
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 Okay. I know we don't we're getting into gory detail and we probably want to move on, but I'm not, when we say to maintain health and natural ability to adapt to climate change, do we mean to maintain health of those forests, wetlands, and wildlife habitats, or some other
Yeah,
aspect of health?
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
That's
yes.
what I was interpreting it to mean. But
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I was too. But do you think that the ordinary reader would do that? Okay. Oh, ecosystem health. Yes.
That
Thank
sounds
you.
great.
That sounds good. Really good.
Yes.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're golden. All right, moving on.
A good point you just made though, Michelle, is if we're on the, I'm wondering how that really fits in that section if it's climate migration.
Well, I like the climate because as we plan for growth, we want to limit incursion into, natural areas. So that made sense to me. I'm not sure about other aspects of the of protection that have to do with like how people use their land, but I think it's fine to say protect and limit incursion.
I think I'm
I'm
overthinking it anyways. Why don't you guys
yeah.
move on?
I'm fine with that myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
This section we were going to move up. I'm not sure where it best belongs. I'm going to move up just for a minute to see what the table of contents is so we can maybe see where to put it. Right now it's down here. Here we talk about what is an action plan. Then we talk about the targets. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe even after, you know, the climate itself, we might want to talk about, okay, here's Underhill. Maybe it goes right
Thought.
here after impacts. What do you think?
Um, you know, I can't
I,
see, we're limited by the screen here because we can't see the whole, how it flows necessarily right this now, but
Yeah,
maybe.
I think it would go well after why have an climate action plan, but before we get into the details of greenhouse gas reductions,
okay,
because it's sort of like, let's just say, here's the intro to what this is. Let's say we want to just give a snapshot of what this town um, looks like.
Yeah,
So that's one proposal.
yeah.
okay.
That works for me.
Yep. Uh,
Okay. Um,
I'm just gonna silence myself so you don't hear the phone ringing. It's a spam
okay.
call. Oh, actually, maybe they hung up. Okay.
Um, so I have some, at the end of this, I've created some different figures that kind of all coordinate themselves, but this is just to explain that, I think. Um, Residents include, everybody good with these little edits?
Residents own their own homes and still pay greater than housing is include really.
I know, it's startling.
That is startling.
houses are
Okay,
expensive here,
very. I keep going up.
and I think
Uh,
that includes taxes.
yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah, because
PIT thing.
this one, even residents that don't own their own homes still have trouble keeping up.
I even paid off mortgages.
Yeah. Um, Vehicles, just as an example of how many people have. And then we've added this to make sure people know that we do have a commuter thingy.
Boy, where'd you get these? Not every home in Underhill has a car. 46 don't. How do they take
The census
green
covers
light?
that, I know.
Should we clarify what years these data are from?
I think it might say up here. Yeah, it says the
2000?
5-year data from 2020.
And is that the
Right,
same
American
for the,
Community Survey.
It
okay, is
all
that the
comes
same?
from that same one, yeah,
Oh, okay. We,
based
okay,
on that 5-year data.
we might want to have an intro to the sections, just making that clear that all the data we're citing come from, or from 2020.
Something like these.
So, like
Oh,
the,
data.
because
man.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
okay. I wouldn't necessarily change that. I'm just, can you scroll down again to the next, the two sections below?
Vehicle use, home heating.
I see.
I just added this because I didn't know where to put the data
Yeah.
link. Could be at the end of sentences, but
I guess I'm just wondering, is above the vulnerable households, vehicle use and home heating fuel, say we have information about Underhill from the American Community Survey 2020, like there, and that would kind of be the introduction to
Cover everything.
that. Then it's clear that everything coming beneath that is coming from that survey. Yeah, something like that.
Gail can edit that for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, which one? Or was that a joke?
This one here. The
But if we do that, we should probably take it out of the other sections. Just, we don't need it anymore.
Right. We can probably put the link there, and then we don't need the other links. We don't need that. We should probably say 5-year. I assume 5-year data means it's compiling data between 2015 and 2020 or something.
right, yeah.
Um,
Oh, that didn't make sense. I don't know how to chart X.
yeah, that's good.
We have to give the chart a name.
Okay. So I can get rid of these links here. Are you falling asleep yet?
No.
Um,
Remarkably, no.
No. Well, this is important and
yeah. Um,
clean. Oh, wait a
so
minute.
moving on to this individual action section. I did reformat it a bit based on some of your comments, Michael, in that, I think it's important that people know that they need to do things now rather than the way it was before, which was, every action can help and da da da. At least this way we say, right now, here's some things that can really make a difference. And part of that is because there's going to be funding available too. And yeah. So here's the thing that the Energy Committee, Michael, Peter, all feel shouldn't be in here, and that is promoting advanced wood heat.
Wait a minute, where's that? I can't, must be it. Wait a
It's
minute. Let me
what's
do this.
crossed off here.
Oh, I see. Okay, advanced heat.
I'm going to just mix it so that we can read it is all. Um, so here's my rationale, Michael.
Yep.
Advanced wood heat is uh, so much more efficient than a regular wood stove or an antiquated system that you're using probably half of the wood that you would if you had just a wood stove. So by saying advanced wood heat, you're really specifying that it is a better system than what so many people have in their homes already. Um, so I feel like we need to talk about inefficient wood heat systems, and by promoting advanced wood heat, you're saying this is a better system.
Yeah, I
I
think
also,
that, I'm sorry.
yeah, I also vote to keep something along these lines in here. I understand the point about it not being ideal, but I'm also thinking, again, personally, we happen to have a pretty fancy wood gasification boiler and we use dead trees on our property to heat, but there are people who heat with wood because they have it on their property and it's cheap. And I don't know if it's equitable to say to say no one should be heating with wood, but we want people to be heating with wood in a way that's as clean and efficient as possible.
I think that the Energy Commission, the committee's position is less that a better system of wood heat isn't better than a worse system of wood heat, but that promoting wood heat in general, basically trees do a lot more, especially on a climate basis. Trees do a lot more for climate as trees than as some kind of fuel. And it's one thing to say, do as good as, if you're going to wind up doing this, do it as well as possible. But quite another thing to be promoting it, advanced wood heat as a solution. In other words, if I were to go out and say, okay, I'm replacing or I'm got to go beyond my current oil boiler, what am I going to do? I could do heat pumps or I could do advanced wood heat. This would be a very bad choice from our point of view. And generally promoting it has its issues. Whereas, again, people who take a little bit of wood off their property and throw it into a wood stove, or I mean, we even burn a fire in the fireplace with about a little bit of wood every year just for atmospherics and that sort of thing. Which is why we were kind of suggesting maybe silence on the issue is better um, than working against it. But we don't feel that it's a good way to wood as a fuel is problematic from a climate, especially from a climate point of view.
Well, I might agree with that, except that I've been doing some reading about carbon sequestration, and trees only contribute to that to a certain extent. And once they get to a certain age, they're not all that helpful. And if they're allowed to, I mean, allowed to then fall into decay, that creates more carbon than at that point. And although you can say yes, but it does provide sanctuary for animals with the, the snugs and things like that, or snags, I guess they're called. It's still a sort of a balance between, yes, trees help, but to a certain point.
Yeah,
There's
Karen, I also have been trying to do some reading on that, and I had thought that the young, rapidly growing forests were better. And what I was coming up with was that actually, because young, rapidly growing forests have so much less tree to fill out with them. I mean, basically, the trees sequester carbon on the basis of their leaves, and the bigger trees have more leaves, and older trees are bigger, and so they basically, that's what grabs the carbon, and that's what pulls it in. I agree that at some point, the trees come down, and what you do with them then deals with that. But my understanding was that crossover point occurs way down the line in most instances, much further down the line than I thought, although I couldn't give you a number right now. But in the multiple decades, and quite a significant multiple at that, of growth, they're still growing and putting that on. Every ring on a tree sequesters carbon, and just think about the way circles work. The circle a foot out includes way more volume than the circle in the center of that growing tree trunk. So that's, my reading suggested that in fact it sequesters more. You're right. I mean, at some point there becomes the question, once a forest becomes utterly climax forest, I mean, what happens then? Should we be taking stuff out or what have you? But that point occurs way down the road, far before. I mean, we're still recovering from we're probably on the verge right now of the 1920s major clearings in Underhill, when 25% of Underhill was forested and 75% open, as opposed to vice versa, which it is now. So we're still recouping those losses at this point.
I think the other point, though, is with wood, it is reproducible, it's natural. And in terms of, I don't know if it's Energy Vermont or which one, but I was reading that in terms of all the sources of heating, heat with wood is less, contributes less to carbon in the atmosphere than, for example, the propane or
Fossil fuels, yeah.
fossil fuels. So,
It's a very complicated issue. It really is, and there's a lot of ways to look at it. Another reason that I like to keep it in here is that if if landowners don't have another a source of income for low grade material, that often makes the difference between whether they are going to be able to afford to keep the land or not. And it all kind of interacts together. So it's about land ownership, and the more land that you have that's forested, the better off we are. If people have to sell it for development, then we've really lost that whole source of ground carbon. And it's complicated, but I still feel like in order to support this whole regeneration of wood material, we have to have something in here that talks about it. I did read the like 19% of homeowners in Underhill have some source of wood heat, so it's not insignificant in our town.
mm-hmm.
All
I
I
right.
mean,
I generally tend to side with Michael on this, to be honest. I think we're writing a climate change report, and we should be focusing on the impacts of wood on the climate and not necessarily about how And it's a touchy. Now I
the
get myself into these words
complexities
where
of it.
there's the other side of it, but I still think Michael's got a point where it's probably, in my opinion, I agree with Michael. It's probably best to not promote it. I think Sandy might be right that we need to mention it, but I
I mean,
see
can't we?
Michael's point that the way this bullet here is, we're saying this is something you should do to progress in our goals, and I don't
Yeah.
see how. I think these people should be transitioning away from heat and fossil fuel, or wood and fossil fuel, and we shouldn't be putting this middle ground thing in there for them to kind of leapfrog to the next.
Can't we say very clearly that the for climate change purposes, the best, cleanest sources of heat are X and Y, and acknowledge that, you know, if for residents that must or can only afford to or whatever, um, heat with wood, you know, use the most efficient, clean processes. I mean, uh, can we kind of do both things? Be really clear about what's cleanest.
I could certainly live with something like that. That that if you got to do it, then do it well.
Yeah, I think we can
And
edit this a little bit to make that.
Does it still belong in this section though? Improve, yeah, I mean, it would, if you improve the efficiency of your wood stove, then it would translate into faster reductions.
Mm.
but the same amount of money invested
And a heat
um,
pump would be much more.
in a heat pump would be far superior.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
well,
when the
the thing
power
about
goes
it, yeah, exactly. I mean, people are going to say, yeah, and how often does the power go out? And those that have a wood stove at least are warm. Where
Well,
the
the power
heat pump,
doesn't go out all that often. And I did an analysis of temperature experience in Vermont over a couple of years because that was part of our AHA discussion in the Energy Committee, and based on the idea that the heat pump wouldn't be able to keep up altogether when it was below about -10, it would be much less efficient between 0 and -10, but you would lose the capability at all. Based on meteorological data for Burlington, I found that there were a total of 7 hours a year that occurred.
that's Burlington, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The airport.
Because
It was airport. It was actual airport data on an hourly or finer grain basis. So even if it was double that, I could turn off the heat in my house for 2 hours, and most people could, and probably wouldn't even notice it. And this is 7 hours a year.
I know, but the last storm before Christmas, how many people
Yep.
didn't have electricity for 4 days on Poker Hill, for
Yep.
example?
Yep.
So I think
Outages are a problem, and that's one of the things that we're trying to address with other
yeah,
aspects.
I think the other thing here is we want people to buy into this, and if you make it so restrictive about the one thing, the wood, which is a source of income for everybody, and also a source of warmth, they're going to turn off to a great deal of this. And that's my take.
Hold on there one second though, Karen, because this doesn't restrict anything. It's just I was saying we should
Not
pull
a
this out and not promote it. I think it's right.
right.
It is an improvement, but I don't think it's the improvement we want to promote necessarily and put out in the front and say this is something that you should do.
I mean, we could say if
I'm
wood
not saying
heat
this is
must
something
be
you can't
used.
do.
Yeah, if wood heat um, must be used, or if wood heat is, I don't know how to say it, but I, I think it would take a little bit of a re-edit to sort of clump the individual actions and clump them into categories. And the category about heating would have an introductory statement that makes it very clear what the cleanest sources of heating are, and then have the bullets. But that would take a little bit more of a yeah.
Massaging, yeah. I like that idea though. Instead of
Um,
clumping it by topic and then
yeah, and having
laying it
like a
out a
little
little
bit
bit.
of an introduction. Um, I mean, another individual mean, I've been reading, the greatest impact any of us can have in our individual actions is flying less. And I know we have one example of like taking direct flights instead of multiple stop flights, but choosing to take one fewer, flight a year can make a huge difference. So,
Not
coming
for
from
me.
the
I hate
girl,
flying, so I don't take them.
yeah, but coming from the girl whose family's in California, and I've had to
Yeah,
visit
there you
a
go.
lot lately, so I am like breaking my rules. But yeah, um,
That's a good
We can
point.
sell you some of our carbon credits or trade you some of them.
um, I know
So
I
in
need
this,
to leave soon. I know we're close to the
oh,
top of
yeah.
the hour. Um,
Let me just finish this section. Michael, since you are our energy efficiency guy, can you take a look at these and maybe group them according to what you think will make the biggest difference?
I can try. I'm not absolutely sure I know what's going on, but I'll give it a shot.
Okay. And then value of this paragraph. Yeah, I took this from a document that talked about that. Oh, this is advanced wood heat again, huh?
And Michael, that is kind of that highlighted paragraph is a good counterpoint to putting in the wood heat point. Is if we're going to put wood heat in there, I think it is helpful to have this paragraph because it's not going to be as impactful in the future when it's not replacing fossil fuels.
Well, that is true.
like I think the ordering would help to kind of do the things you can do in your home heating, and then have that statement there rather than after electric vehicles, and then have like transportation actions. And then it doesn't always make sense to get an EV depending upon how much you drive and
Yeah.
how old your car is and all that.
Okay. All right. We'll review that. And I did want to just quickly show you that I have these graphs here that we can use to replace all the other ones
Good.
so that they're a little easier to read and more consistent. Anyways. Um,
Great.
well, we haven't done it all yet. What are our marching orders here? Let's see.
Oops.
Let me get us back to. Where is everybody?
Why does it say leave site? Changes you made may not be saved. Whoops.
I know I'm gonna do that before I leave, but I wanted to come back to us together here.
I think it
Uh,
saves them anyway. I don't know why it says that. I got bailed out a couple of times and it saved it.
It's saved. I'm still in there.
yeah, the comments don't always save, which is kind of annoying to me,
Oh, if
but
you're still typing it and you haven't submitted it, that's probably
yeah,
what it's talking about. If you're in the middle
yeah.
of typing a comment and haven't finished it, it might not save.
Yeah.
Um, so here we are in March. Um, we have probably another session of editing, I guess. And then what will we do next? Do we want to try to put more into the appendix before we move forward? I'm just trying to think of what I can prepare in advance for next time if we actually do make it through here. And all the other items that we had on that long list of things that might be helpful, we haven't really gone through and rated that yet either. Um, And then funding wise, trying to identify what funding sources may be helpful to dive into. I just am trying to think of a timeline, some sort of a target, so we can work towards it a little more rather than just leaving it wide open. So I'm open to suggestions here.
And when
Do
you're
we have a
talking about putting things into an appendix, what kind of things? What kind of topics?
Um, things like I think it would be the things in that long list that we haven't said are high priority, but are still useful things to consider. Those kinds of things. Research that we think still needs to be done. Um, yeah, those kind of things. Any supporting information, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of an implementation section, I think, would be whether it goes in an appendix or is appended in some other way. That I'm used to having that in plan. You know, the most valuable plans are the ones that tell you the most about what to do next. And if you got a list of actions and who's going to do them and when, what kind of schedule it ought to be done on, and what kind of mechanisms are going to be available to do them, that can be a very helpful thing. That can be a lot of work too. I don't know whether, you know, at the moment I am not quite prepared to pick it up and do it myself, and I don't know
I
whether
wonder if we
Anne
could do
is
a pared
willing to help.
I wonder if we could do a pared down version in this municipal next steps section at the end of the
Maybe something like that.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems a lot more doable to me, just suggesting who the stakeholders are, partners are for kind of um, thinking about, you know, how to move these recommendations forward.
Right.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of stuff. Like I remember, you know, one of the recommendations was restart the Tri-Town Transit Committee. You know, that was a specific recommendation that somebody put forward. It wasn't me actually. I was on that, but and it may not be precisely the Tri-Town Committee that we had before, but a transit supportive committee, and perhaps even in conjunction with at least Jericho and maybe Cambridge. I don't know, but you know, and that was, you know, should we recommend that as a specific action under our transportation pieces? And you know, and then we say who does it and what kind of time frame it ought to be on and mechanisms that are associated with that, et cetera, et cetera. And that's like one thing. And I think we had like what 80 items or something like that we had on
Well,
that list.
so let's reprioritize that list and get the 80 items down to a smaller number, because some of those probably are very low on the priority list. And based on our prioritization, we can eliminate the lower ones.
Well, I
Or we could,
resorted that list. I'm sorry.
or we could go with the low hanging fruit right now as the priorities, but they might not
Yep.
have the biggest impact.
I think I reshuffled that list at one point to sort of try to put likes with likes. I thought I sent it out to everyone, but if I didn't, I can do that and people can take a look at it and see. And Sandy
Are
had
we
started with had a whole number of parameters that we'd associate with it. I forget what all of those were, but I made a note of those too. I'd be glad to pass that around based on all the work that Sandy did originally pulling it together. And then I reshuffled the deck, as it were, just to try to get like things with like things and see if anybody
so,
wants to do anything with it.
are we talking about the list that this group, the brainstorming list that this group generated many months
Right.
ago? And so
Yeah.
is there still a lot of stuff on there that's not already made it into the report in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form?
There is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think we picked a lot of the good things, but there's still some good ideas there that,
I
we don't want
see.
to get rid of. Yeah.
Um,
And some
Do
of
we want
them
to
are
review
just
that?
more, hmm?
Do we want to review those at a meeting just to see if there's anything else that needs to find its way in?
Yeah, yeah, I think we can do that. Michael, if you could send that to everybody, that would be good.
I'm glad to do
And
that.
I'll take that and see if there's any combining I can do or whatever, or at least say, oh, we partially identified that in there, but we haven't done it all. So yeah.
Yep.
And I like the idea of a pared down implementation plan, even if it's really pared down and just a broad level thing in the municipal next
Mhm.
steps. But I feel like that's
Yeah,
worth our time at some
Yeah.
point.
I think
I
it's a
think
good
it is
idea, Kale.
pared down, pared down.
Mhm,
Yeah, but to give some guidance at least, even if it's very pared down.
mhm.
I like the word pared down though.
Yeah, we like it.
Well, make
Um,
it simple and people get lost in minutia
Yep.
details.
okay, well, next time I hope we can finish this, the cap, and possibly start with this pared down implementation plan. How about that?
Yeah, sounds
Right.
good.
Sounds
So
good. Now, fair warning, I did put when I went through, I made some substantive changes to stuff ahead of this when I was doing my edits. So, Sandy, you probably already noticed some of those, and so
Well,
definitely
we
some
can,
of them need discussing.
Do we have a deadline from the town about when our report is due? Okay, I just,
no, we had sort of an open-ended assignment. It didn't even say we will come up with a plan, but we decided that that's what we wanted to do, and Anne offered to draft it, so it seemed like that was the best thing. Next steps for this committee, that's up to the committee. Maybe all we want to do is say, okay, here's the plan. Planning Commission, Conservation Commission, Energy Commission, do it, or whatever. Unless there's some specific things that we feel we have a special niche that isn't covered already by other town committees. So
is it feasible that we could say May is a deadline for we'll have one meeting in between and maybe the May meeting and we can put in next steps of what maybe walking it through the different committees or something like that because the next month after May is June and that's going to be hard to get together, I think. I don't know how people feel, but
no, I
uh,
agree. Once the
yeah.
summer hits, it's really challenging to keep things going.
Yeah.
Um, boy. I
are there any
w-
other stakeholders that have to review this before we submit the plan? Either anyone else that's on this task force, but hasn't been available, or it's just from us, so no one else has to look at it before we submit it.
well, Anne, this actually is from Anne. She is going to finalize it and
Okay, cool.
submit it as, this is the plan that we've done with the climate change task force. And the first stop is the Planning Commission, I believe. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and it has to get approved by the planning commission and the select board, unfortunately.
Oh,
small
good.
team, right?
Yeah. Let's see.
I would think the hurdle would be the planning commission. If the planning commission approves, I would
Yes.
be surprised if the select board doesn't. But maybe I'm being overly optimistic. But
Yeah.
Well, based on our conversations, I think we will have a challenge ahead of us. Yep.
keep in mind, we
Uh,
only need to get 5 of them.
yeah. Okay, well, that's great. At least we have something to work towards. And I really appreciate all your input tonight. And so I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
And a second.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Thank
see you
you,
next month.
Sandy.
Have a good night,
Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
Sandy.
very much.
Thanks,
Bye.
Andy, for all your work.